Where do white people come from? No, really. Where do you actually come from outside of the USA? I'm asking that the same way Black Americans get asked where we come from. And I'm asking it now because of something subtle but important. With the updates people have been previewing for the 2030 census, under white, it just says white, then it lists optional European subgroups. No required origin, no European American at the top, just white. And a lot of white Americans who've been here generationally were genuinely confused by that. Because many of them don't identify as Irish or Italian or German anymore. They identify as American, or as a mixture of several European groups. Some didn't even know what box to check. That moment matters, because if identity can become that fluid over time, then let me ask the question that's always asked of us. Where do white people come from? Depending on who you ask, the answers range from ancient steppe migrations, to biblical lineages, to spiritual counter-myths, to ice civilizations, to giants, to aliens. And yet somehow it always lands on one very comfortable ending: white American. Hold that thought. We'll come back to it. So let's walk the accepted story slowly and in order. If we're talking about the earliest commonly cited roots, scholars usually start with what's called Proto-Indo-European speaking populations. Not a race, not a nation. A reconstructed linguistic group placed around the Pontic-Caspian steppe roughly 6,000 to 8,000 years ago. That timing matters, because by then, Homo sapiens had already existed for about 300,000 years. For most of human history, people across the planet were melanated. Dark skin wasn't regional, it was standard. From those Proto-Indo-European speakers, we later see the steppe pastoralists, most commonly associated with the Yamnaya culture, around 3300 to 2600 BCE. Highly mobile groups, horse domestication, large-scale migrations. Genetic studies show that in many regions, these groups didn't simply blend, they replaced earlier populations. Europe didn't just grow, in places it reset. Then comes the Bell-Beaker phenomenon, beginning around 2800 BCE. Not an ethnicity, not a race. A cultural package that spread across Western and Central Europe. In places like Britain, genetic evidence shows near total replacement of earlier male lineages. So when people picture ancient Europeans, they're often imagining continuity. Now let's talk phenotype. The lighter skin tones associated with modern Europeans are relatively recent adaptations. Key genetic variants like SLC24A5, SLC45A2, and eye color markers tied to OCA2 and HERP2 spread mainly within the last 8,000 to 10,000 years. That's new, extremely new when placed next to the 300,000-year history of our species. And the sunlight explanation gets oversimplified. Yes, UV exposure played a role, but darker skin populations existed across many climates long before Europe developed lighter phenotypes. Indigenous Arctic peoples, for example, historically maintained darker complexions than Europeans, supported by diet and environment. So cold doesn't automatically equal whiteness. Light skin is an adaptation, not an origin. Only later do we see what people recognize as regional European identities: Celtic, Italic, Germanic, Slavic, all layered, all mixed, all time-bound. There is no single moment where Europe becomes white. That label comes after the fact. Now, the term Caucasian. Yes, it was formalized during an era of racial classification and later misused in pseudoscientific hierarchies. But geographically, the Caucasus region sits near where many scholars place early Proto-Indo-European populations, that crossroads between Europe and Western Asia. So while the racial ranking was flawed, the origin zone itself wasn't random. The problem wasn't pointing to a place, it was turning that place into a hierarchy. And once the label stopped serving power, it quietly faded. Alongside this academic story, there have always been other origin stories. Biblical traditions tracing Europeans to Japheth, spiritual counter-narratives like the Jacob story functioning as moral allegory, and online, Hyperborea, ice civilizations, giants, Nephilim, aliens, even ice wall theories tied to ancient maps and polar myths. Whether someone believes those or not, notice the pattern. Europeans are always allowed multiple explanations. Now fast forward. Europeans migrate to the Americas. Different languages, different religions, often not considered white at first. Irish, Italian, Eastern European. Over time, those distinctions collapse. What remains is a new identity, white American. So fluid that by 2030, many don't even know which box fits them anymore. Now compare that to Black Americans. Our people did not arrive as a single condition or a single story. Yes, there was enslavement, but there were also freedmen, free people of color, Afro-Indigenous communities, and people with African, European, and Native ancestry forming families here for centuries. Our lineage is layered. Our origins are plural. Our culture was shaped here. We are not a monolith, and we are not defined by one chapter. Yet on census forms, the label still reads Black or African American, a continent. Meanwhile, people from Africa and the Caribbean can arrive recently and adopt the same label, even speak for Black American culture. So everyone else's identity updates with time and place. Ours is treated as frozen. Which raises a question: if white can exist as a broad category with optional subgroups, if American Indian or Alaska Native is defined by writing in your tribe, then why is there no space to acknowledge that Black Americans are a people formed from African, European, and Indigenous roots right here over centuries? So when people ask, why does it matter what Black Americans are called? I'll end where it actually belongs. If identity is allowed to evolve for everyone else, then it's long past time to recognize foundational Black Americans. People are taught that whiteness is ancient, original, and synonymous with intelligence, order, and civilization. The actual human timeline does not support that story. Myth 1. White people are the original humans. According to multiple studies published in Nature, including research by Jean-Jacques Hublin and colleagues on early fossils like Jebel Erhoud, modern human beings are at least 300,000 years old and originate in Africa. For the vast majority of human existence, humans were dark-skinned. Whiteness simply did not exist yet. Myth 2. White skin is ancient. Research led by Mathieson and others, also published in Nature, shows that the genetic variants responsible for light skin in Europe only became common within the last 8 to 10,000 years, mostly after agriculture, population turnover, and adaptation to low ultraviolet environments. That means for over 90% of human history, Europeans themselves were darker. Myth 3. Cold climates create white people. According to evolutionary biologists like Jew and Mathieson, skin color follows ultraviolet radiation, not temperature. That's why populations in cold regions such as the Arctic, ancient Siberia, and the Tibetan Plateau were historically dark to medium pigmented. Cold does not produce whiteness. Myth 4. Straight hair belongs to white people. Genetic research on the EDAR gene, published in Human Genetics, shows that straight, thick hair becomes common first in East Asian populations tens of thousands of years ago. Straight hair is ancient and non-European in origin. It existed long before light skin evolved. Myth 5. Blue eyes equal white ancestry. Ancient DNA studies published in Nature by researchers like Lazaridis show that early Europeans often had dark skin and light eyes at the same time. Eye color, skin color, and ancestry do not travel together. Blue eyes are a mutation, not a racial marker. Myth 6. Whiteness is a biological group. Genetics does not recognize white as a coherent population. Anthropologists and geneticists consistently show that whiteness is a social and political category that shifts over time. Groups now considered white were excluded from whiteness in the recent past. Myth 7. Europeans built civilization first. Archaeology says otherwise. According to science, humans were present in the Americas over 20,000 years ago, as shown by the White Sands footprints. Monumental architecture like Göbekli Tepe appears around 9600 BCE, thousands of years before European farming societies. Monte Verde in Chile, dated by Tom Dillahay and others, shows complex human organization at least 14,000 years ago. Myth 8. Whiteness equals modern intelligence. Human beings were already navigating oceans, managing ecosystems, mapping seasons, and organizing large labor projects tens of thousands of years before light skin became common anywhere. Intelligence did not suddenly appear with whiteness. Myth 9. Ancient people were primitive and disorganized. Hunter-gatherers built massive stone complexes, maintained trade networks, practiced astronomy, and created symbolic art long before modern racial categories existed. Complexity is ancient. Myth 10. Whiteness is the default human state. It isn't. Whiteness is a recent regional adaptation that only makes sense in specific environments. Most of human history unfolded without it. The larger myth isn't just about phenotype, it's about ownership of humanity's story. Modern humans were already ancient, global, inventive, and advanced long before whiteness emerged. The timeline makes that clear.
Hey guys, we can see here that ChatGPT has given us a shocking revelation. You see this lady's videos? I don't joke with them. She has done a lot of ChatGPT researches and I give her all the credit she deserves. I'll leave her name down below or somewhere on the screen. Please do well to support her because credit belongs to her sincerely. I also give credit to all original content I've used here today. With that being said, I'll roll out all the other videos I have for you and I'll be right back.
They say it's a myth. They say it's hate. But when you trace the science in the scriptures, what you find is a pattern too precise to ignore. 6,000 years ago, according to the teachings of the Nation of Islam, a brilliant but misguided black scientist named Yaqub began an experiment on the island of Patmos. Not just a science experiment, an agenda. He wanted to engineer a new people by isolating the lightest traits in our gene pool, generation after generation. Through selective breeding, he began grafting out the dominant traits of original people, melanin, compassion, connection to the divine, and left behind something else. A being with little pigmentation, recessive traits, aggression hardwired through scarcity. And while they laugh at the idea, science quietly confirms what they mock. Recessive traits only rise in isolated populations. That's not mythology, that's evolutionary biology. It's called a genetic bottleneck. European populations, especially those descending from the last ice age, are genetically linked to a very small founder group, likely less than 200 individuals. And when you isolate a population, what happens? The weaker traits that would normally be masked by dominant melanin, start to express. Red hair, pale skin, blue eyes, and lower levels of melanin come with consequences. Weaker immune function, inability to absorb sunlight, higher rates of neurodegenerative disease. That's not opinion, that's peer-reviewed. The MC1R gene governs melanin expression. In melanin-dominant people, it regulates deep pigmentation, UV protection, and energy conversion. In melanin-recessive populations, mutations in this gene result in depigmentation, traits that make the body vulnerable in sunlight, mentally unstable under pressure, and cut off from vibrational memory. And here's the part that connects the science to the soul. Once Yaqub's creation reached critical mass, they were exiled into the caves of West Asia, what we now call Europe. There, in the cold, dark isolation of mountains and ice, survival wasn't about harmony, it was about domination. Over thousands of years, a culture emerged that saw nature not as divine, but as something to conquer. Scarcity bred greed. Sunlight became an enemy. And from this cauldron, the false systems we now live under were born. White supremacy, colonization, capitalism, it all traces back to a cold world mindset forged in those caves. So when they ask, where do white people really come from? The answer isn't just Europe, it's grafted mutation. It's selective survival. It's a legacy of trying to escape the sun and the truth that lives in it. And that's why they still try to block it out. Why they dim the skies with chemicals. Why they can't exist without stealing our rhythm, our melanin, our memory. But what they forget is this. No matter how far you run from the sun, you can't escape the truth written in your origin. And now, you ever wonder why less than 15% of the world's population feels the need to control 100% of the narrative? Because when you're a genetic outlier, born from a recessive mutation, with a ticking clock on your DNA, you have to lie to survive. Let's get into it. Modern Europeans carry between 2 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's confirmed by peer-reviewed journals like Nature, Science Advances, and Cell. The Neanderthals were not some mystical master race. They were cold-adapted hominins who lived in caves, scavenged for food, and operated in small, isolated groups. They weren't the future. They were a failed branch of the human tree. And those Neanderthal traits still show up in their descendants. Lower sociability, higher aggression, light skin and light eyes, red or straight hair, high pain tolerance, shorter limb ratios, and a disconnection from nature's rhythms. They weren't creators, they weren't builders, they were survivors of harsh, sun-starved environments, until they weren't. They died out, not because they were killed off, but because their own epigenetic behavior, Their limited fertility, isolationist tendencies, and lack of social cohesion couldn't sustain their species. Their extinction is a warning, not a blueprint. So how did they live on? Through interbreeding with Homo sapiens. And that's where modern Europeans come in. The Neanderthal ghost genome lives inside them today. And ironically, that same genetic signature they carry is the very thing they now weaponize to claim superiority. But here's where it gets deeper. Even some East Africans, like Ethiopians, show slightly elevated Neanderthal DNA. Not because they interbred directly with Neanderthals, but because of Eurasian backflow. Invaders from the north came back down into Africa, carrying their DNA, trauma, and mutations with them. And even then, their percentage is far lower than what you see in white Europeans. Sub-Saharan Africans, Indigenous Americans, and Melanesians, their levels of Neanderthal DNA are negligible to non-existent because the most melanated peoples of Earth didn't need to survive the ice by digging holes. They were already thriving in cosmic alignment with Earth, Sun, and Spirit. And speaking of alignment, let's talk skin. The light skin mutation in modern humans is recent, very recent. Studies from University College London show that the SLC24A5 and SLC45A2 gene variants responsible for pale skin didn't even exist until about 6,000 years ago. Before that, even in Europe, the original populations had dark skin, dark eyes, and curly hair. In fact, Cheddar Man, a 10,000-year-old skeleton found in England, had very dark skin and blue eyes. Let that sink in. Whiteness did not exist when the first civilizations were rising, which means the founders of Kemet, not white. The builders of Sumer, not white. The mound builders of Cahokia, not white. The creators of the Indus Valley, China's Shang Dynasty, Olmecs, Inca, and Maya, not white. So when people ask, what did white people build? The answer is simple. They didn't build. They inherited. And when they realized that their numbers were small and their genes recessive, they panicked. Enter eugenics. Let's name names. Francis Galton, the father of eugenics, cousin to Darwin. Charles Davenport, eugenicist who pushed racial hygiene policies in the US. Harry Laughlin, architect of sterilization laws. Ernst Rudin, Nazi eugenics leader supported by American funding. The Rockefeller Foundation and Carnegie Institution, they funded the research, the labs, the policies. They all pushed the lie that white was not only right, but endangered. So they legislated it, sterilized non-white women, separated babies from their parents, and drew bloodlines to try and purify the impure. Why? Because they saw what was coming. You can't keep a mutation alive when the earth is healing. When the sun returns to its cycle, when people of color reconnect with their power, when rhythm, not reason, guides the future. And now they're saying everyone has melanin. Cute. But next time, let's break that down. Because not all melanin is created equal. There's a reason they study eumelanin, neuromelanin, and pheomelanin separately. There's a reason they mine melanin from fetal tissue in animals. There's a reason they patent it, and there's a reason why, despite all their technology, they can't synthesize the real thing. So no, this isn't just science, it's spiritual warfare through biology. And day 7, we're going to talk about why they fear the sun and what it means for the end of their timeline.
Welcome back, guys. Anyways, you guys have seen all the videos I've rolled out for you. And in my opinion, everything Chatgpt pointed out is correct. Let's check out some comments of some comments people have dropped in reaction to this. Someone said, speaking the truth and nothing but the truth, which is correct. Another person said, explained so clearly. People have been giving the white people so much credit. Thank you for sharing. Actually, the credit belongs to the blacks. Sincerely. Someone has said, good information. Another one said, your page is getting more and more interesting. Thank you for sharing this. Someone else said, wow, powerful message. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you today. I believe this is like an eye-opener to you all, if you know what I mean. As always, I give credit to all the original creators of these videos I have used today. Thank you guys for coming with me today on my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel. Okay, thank you so much. Have an amazing day, guys. Cheers.